Our regularly scheduled programming will not be shown in order to bring you the following special presentation.
It's been more than 4 years since the U.S. invasion of Afghanistan and nearly 3 years since the war in Iraq began. More than 2,300 American troops have been killed in the war zones, and another 16,000 U.S. servicemen and women have been injured in combat. Yet we hear very little about the lives of U.S. troops after they leave American soil. Now, News Channel 8 takes an unprecedented look into the lives of local Bay Area troops serving overseas, in the war zones in Afghanistan and Iraq, and at the military hospital in Germany, where doctors and nurses fight to save the lives of the wounded. These are their war stories. Here are Bob Heitz and Keith Cates.
Since the beginning of the War on Terror, more than 100 Floridians have been killed in the effort, and some 21,000 others, both active duty and reserve, who call our Sunshine State home, are still in Iraq and Afghanistan.
No matter what your political beliefs are on this war, there is something you need to know. The troops you're about to meet, the ones serving our nation on the battlefields and in various supporting roles, want us to keep them in our thoughts and our prayers and to never forget their sacrifice. That's why in this special, we focus entirely on them and their stories.
With the help of U.S. Central Command at Tampa's MacDill Air Force Base, I traveled for almost 3 weeks throughout the combat zones in Afghanistan and in Iraq.
And I spent a week in Germany at Ramstein Air Base and Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, where wounded troops are flown for life-saving surgery.
We begin in Doha, Qatar. This small Middle East nation is between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, and it's also home for Central Command's Forward Command. It is the largest pre-positioning base outside the United States, from which both troops and equipment are sent to the war zones. Technology has forever changed modern warfare, and in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, the U.S. military is in high-tech overdrive, driven from an unimpressive and dusty place seemingly in the middle of nowhere. At its home base at MacDill in Tampa, Central Command headquarters is a rather imposing structure. Here in Doha, it is warehoused in warehouses, but it's what's inside that counts, of course. And inside is the most advanced telecommunications center I've ever seen. Here, American troops and civilians work side by side with coalition partners. This building monitors operations throughout Afghanistan and Iraq, on the ground and in the air.
We can put our Hellfires right where they need to be to avoid all kinds of collateral damage.
Captain Lance Brockman explained to me how they can attack the enemy precisely, thanks to satellite images or views transmitted back by unmanned aerial vehicles called Predators. The remote-controlled planes are flown by pilots on the ground.
We can give our feed that we see on the screen down to Army troops or Marine troops in contact through what we call a rover feed, so that they can get an over-the-hill kind of look, less fog of war for our guys, so we have more terrorist capturing capability and life-saving capability.
Capabilities that U.S. troops are helping Afghan and Iraqi troops to gain so that the Americans can come home.
A 120-millimeter rocket fired at us happens about once every week or two.
Troops like Major Howard Hall, when not deployed, he reports to work at the Marine Corps Reserve Center on Gandy Boulevard. I was embedded with Hall in Fallujah, site of the fiercest combat for the U.S. Marine Corps since Vietnam, and the place where 4 American contractors were ambushed and killed in March 2004. Their mutilated bodies left hanging from this bridge. Today, Fallujah is much calmer, and the job here for Hall and his men is teaching combat operations to the 2nd Brigade of the Iraqi Intervention Forces.
We're busy almost around the clock with our counterparts, training, coaching, mentoring. That's a full-time job.
Military trainers like Hall say the hardest lesson to teach Afghan and Iraqi troops, many of whom are military veterans of the previous regimes, is that now they may and should show initiative.
Independent actions, initiative, all these type of things that we thrive on, that was all punished in the former Army. So while we have some very skilled, very talented young officers and non-commissioned officers, they've never been given the authority to take action on their own, to make decisions, or even to make suggestions to senior officers. This is my favorite meal over here, kebabs.
It's a farewell feast, an respect and camaraderie is obvious between Americans and Iraqis. Major Hall and his Marines are rotating back to the U.S., replaced by other American trainers. And while Hall and his men can't wait to get home, others serving in Afghanistan and Iraq are glad to grab a mini vacation back at Forward Command in Doha.
Our goal is to get them back into the fight, safe and sound out of here, and relaxed and ready to go.
Few can leave their deployment to come all the way home to the States for a vacation, but a 4-day stay in Qatar lets the troops breathe a little easier with all the modern conveniences of home and no MREs.
Breakfast of champions, Bob.
And that's not all. The theme here is treat them as heroes, and the troops get everything from movies and swimming pools, facials, and pedicures for the foot soldier.
It's just a time away from everything where you can just kick back and do nothing if you want. So.
Do you look forward to it?
Yeah, I needed it. It was a good rest.
A small escape from the realities of war before these men and women return to the front lines where the enemy vies for its next kill. As you can see, the relationship between Forward Command and troops on the ground like Major Hall is an absolutely vital one in the war effort, in more ways than one.
Also vital to this war effort, the medical teams who care for our wounded troops. Many of them are field medics working downrange in the combat zones. But when soldiers are seriously injured, they are flown to an emergency room thousands of miles away. To learn more about this place, and more importantly, how it benefits our troops, I flew to Landstuhl, Germany, where I found passionate doctors and nurses, including several from right here in the Bay Area, and they're saving lives around the clock. American blood continues to flow in a never-ending fight with an elusive enemy. As bullets rain down and car bombs explode, 2,200 miles away in the south of Germany, people are celebrating. Once a year in the city of Landstuhl, countrymen raise a glass to this European hamlet's rich history. A city torn from the pages of a storybook with rolling hills and beautiful vistas, viewed best from atop this 12th century castle. Hardly a day goes by that a plane doesn't fly overhead, piercing this scenic landscape. On board, American casualties, soldiers who just hours earlier were in a combat zone. This is the Germany most wounded troops never see. There's no time. When their plane lands just beyond this quaint village, doctors, nurses, and support teams are waiting, engines running and hearts pounding.
If you can make it to Germany, you're almost 100% home.
Captain Paul Langevin welcomes wounded troops to Ramstein Air Base and makes sure they get the medical care they need, even if it means staying in one of his overflow beds until there's room at the hospital.
We are the link. We're the constant link between the patients and the medical treatment facilities.
His mission, get the injured from this tarmac to nearby Landstuhl Regional Medical Center as soon as possible, where doctors and nurses have been caring for injured troops since 1953. The place has never been busier.
Towards the end of Fallujah, when I got here, I could tell, it was a real shock to see how busy it was. I didn't expect to see all the things I was seeing at the time.
20-year-old Airman First Class Rolando Quiles is from Temple Terrace. It's his job to take vital signs. He can relate to the men and women he cares for because, like him, most are young.
I met a 20-year-old here when I first got here. It was kind of like the defining moment here to really make me realize what I'm getting myself into. And he had lost both of his legs. And just seeing something like that was really, really shocking to me. But the most shocking thing really out of it was that his spirit and his attitude wasn't even like he had his head down. He had his head up and he was looking for the more brighter side of things, as to where he was more thankful that he was alive and going to be able to go back and see his family.
But when one leaves, another checks in. The day we met Airman Quiles, he was taking Specialist Jamie Smith's temperature, a soldier from the 278th National Guard unit based in Kingsport, Tennessee.
You know the guys you see standing on top of the Hummers?
That was you?
Yeah.
Smith was in the northwest corner of Baghdad when a car bomb exploded.
We were a meter away from it when it went off. That's what they tell me. It knocked me unconscious.
Despite his severe injuries, Specialist Smith considers himself blessed.
Yeah, God was looking out for me. He was. I had a piece of shrapnel come underneath my collar of my vest and hit me in the neck, and then, of course, I got my burns in my face. and a piece go through my leg. And we were in a armored Hummer, but still, that's nothing. It mutilated my helmet and messed my vest up. And, of course, it ruined my glasses too. But if I wouldn't have my glasses on, I'd probably been blind.
Well, good news is you're coming home.
Yeah.
And you're going to be a dad.
Yeah, and I'm going to be a dad, so it's going to be even better.
After seeing what I've seen here, I'm kind of looking forward to going out there and playing even a bigger role than what's going on here.
Airman Quiles says there is a chance he could eventually be sent to Iraq to serve as a medic, trading an assignment at the busiest ward at the hospital in the proud city of Landstuhl, for the most dangerous theater in Iraq, where firefights rage and roadside booby traps wait for the next American target. Wounded troops who make it to Landstuhl have an excellent chance of survival, nearly 100%. And the turnaround time at the hospital is remarkable. Most patients are in and out in 48 hours, flown to treatment centers back in the States, or in some cases, back to the battlefield. As for the wounded soldier in our story, Jamie Smith, he was flown to the Army's Burn Center in Texas for more treatment before heading home to Tennessee in time for Thanksgiving.
Coming up next, a different kind of war story. What these children have to do with the war on terror, and how the U.S. troops raced to save the life of a severely burned newborn baby in the middle of a war zone. And later, we'll take you inside the operating room with a Navy seaman shot during an ambush. It's a race against time as surgeons tried to save his arm. Those stories and more when War Stories continues in just a moment.
A lot of numbers are tossed around when talking about the war effort. Sometimes they vary depending on the source. For example, we checked with the Department of Defense and they say U.S. military field hospitals in the war zones have treated more than 16,000 American troops since the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan. But consider this, Bob. Doctors in Germany tell me they've actually treated more than 28,000.
That's right, Keith. And while the numbers may vary, the point is doctors are treating thousands of injured troops. But according to our military sources, we've also treated more than 340,000 injured Iraqis and Afghans free of charge. Now we give you a rare look into this side of War Stories. But we have to warn you, some of the video you're about to see can be difficult to watch.
This is Zargona. She is about a 75-day-old little girl who on the second day of life suffered third-degree burns to her face and the top of her head.
The man hovering over the baby's bed is Dr. Arthur Chasen, the lead physician at Bagram Airfield Hospital. Here, American personnel treat not only injured U.S. servicemen and women, but also Afghans, free of charge. Baby Zargona would not be alive were it not for them.
Right now, her problem is severe scarring has scarred her mouth open and her eyes open, and at the same time, all the tissue off the top of her skull came off, so she's got a bare skull.
Down the hall is Setakula. A cooking accident left him with burns over 60% of his body. American military doctors have operated on him more than 20 times. They had to amputate his right leg and the fingers of his right hand. His father can't thank the Americans enough for saving his son's life. For Dr. Chasen, it's all about changing the perception the Afghans have about Americans.
They're told we're the great Satan, and then they come in here and we save their little boy or their little girl and give it back to them, and it changes their mind.
The American troops have also changed the minds of 6-year-old Basira Jan and her dad. Basira's case has been adopted by Indiana and Florida National Guard troops at Camp Phoenix near Kabul. Major Courtney Callis of Venice is helping to send her to the United States for surgery.
She has a congenital heart defect, and she's going to have heart surgery once she gets to Indiana.
Callis says helping this little girl provides a special bond for the troops.
They see her picture and things like that, so they have that one little connection that ties her into the Florida Guard.
I work in here, I take them home to money. That's good. I like the American people. He hooked me up.
I met Mubarak at Bagram Airfield, where he is one of 19 Afghan boys under the wing of Command Sergeant Major Tim Green. The boys help the soldiers with little chores and proudly display their ID cards. The youngest of the bunch is 7, the oldest 15.
You see right now they're very polite, they've got manners, they're courteous, they're clean, they're educated. In the system over here, they can't heat the schools, so they take the winters off. But these kids need something to do instead of just hanging out at the front gate and getting in trouble. So we paid for 3 teachers at the boys' school and 3 at the girls' school.
These good kids, as they are called around the camp, now all have goals.
Doctor.
Really?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'll bet you're going to make it just fine, buddy.
Back at the Bagram Airfield Hospital, the future is looking brighter even for little Zagona, the severely burned baby girl. The troops here have adopted her and are sponsoring her on a journey to the United States for further treatment.
I'm very proud and gratified of the American soldiers that have really sort of stepped up to the plate to do what needs to be done for this little girl. You know, not of, you know, they don't have to do these things.
Baby Zargona, the baby girl you just saw, was released from the hospital at Bagram Airfield in late November when she was 5.5 months old. Here she is in her father's arms as she left the hospital. Now she and her family are just waiting for a visa so that they can come to Shriners Hospital in Boston for follow-up surgeries in January. As for 10-year-old Setakula, whose fingers and leg had to be amputated, he has also been discharged from the hospital. He was given a wheelchair for mobility, and he's expected to return soon for follow-up appointments with the doctor.
Coming up next on War Stories, how the wounded troops travel thousands of miles from the war zones for life-saving surgery. Plus, we return to the war zone to see what local Bay Area troops face every day out on patrol. You can send us your feedback about this broadcast and see additional material including Tampa Tribune articles and video postcards from local troops serving overseas. Just log on to TBO.com and type in keyword War Stories.
IEDs are the terrorists' favorite weapon.
And as this war goes along, that certainly seems to be the case. It is becoming more evident. These improvised explosive devices are taking a toll on our troops. Those thundering blasts heard and felt in Iraq reverberate in Germany, where doctors operate on dozens of injured service members each and every day. Another day, another life-saving surgery at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany.
We see it all.
What surgeons see most are wounds inflicted by improvised explosive devices. Bomb blasts that produce flesh-tearing shrapnel, causing all sorts of head, neck, and extremity injuries.
Some of them are minor, in which they were just scattered with shrapnel. Some of them are quite severe, where they've sustained multi-trauma, amputations, loss of sight, loss of spinal cord function.
Lieutenant Colonel Guillermo Tellez, stationed at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa until last year, is now chief of the Division of Surgery at Landstuhl. He invited me to see for myself the amazing work his surgeons are doing. There are 8 operating rooms at the medical center, and they stay busy. Surgeons perform anywhere from 30 to 60 procedures each and every day. A warning, what you're about to see is disturbing, but around here it's an all too common sight. I watch as Dr. Howard Riker tries to save the arm of a Navy seaman shot during an ambush. He explains how a large caliber bullet caused the arm to burst open as it passed through the skin. The wound extends from the shoulder all the way down to the wrist. If his arteries are beyond repair, surgeons will be forced to amputate. The trip from the war zone to the operating room in Germany is a long one. 2,200 miles, 2 time zones, and multiple stops. But the survival rate of those who make it to this hospital is nearly 100%.
Our rate of losing patients here is negligible. Very, very few patients die on our service.
Tellez gives credit to the trauma teams in Iraq and Afghanistan. Medics are typically the first to stop the bleeding and get the wounded from the battlefield to small mobile hospitals. When a seriously injured soldier is stabilized, a chopper flies him to a larger surgical facility, like this one in Balad.
I lost a couple of fingers in my right hand and took a chunk out of my left hand.
Within hours of being picked up, treated, and stabilized, support teams carry those needing more surgery onto cargo planes. Doctors strap the injured into the flying intensive care units and join them for the 6-hour flight to Ramstein, the closest airbase to Landstuhl. At the hospital, Sergeant Shadanika Crawford shows me how they track the incoming troops.
Some more help over here.
Everything done for that patient is documented by computer, so that when they land, no time is wasted getting them into surgery. It's a daily routine.
every day. There are some days when there aren't flights, and they're few and far between.
Minutes after touching down at the airbase, patients are transferred to buses and rushed to the medical center. As many as 80 surgeons are on call 24 hours a day. Before the bus from Ramstein even pulls up, the medical team is scrubbed and ready. Back in the OR, efforts to save this Navy seaman's arm remain iffy at best. The damage is done. Even if doctors avoid amputation, he'll have limited use. But he is alive, I'm reminded. Doctors say the same injury in past wars most likely would have killed him.
It is sobering and very humbling and very gratifying to be part of this team here.
Before I leave, Lieutenant Colonel Tellez tells me to make sure I deliver this message to the folks back home in Tampa.
The parents that have young men and women that are downrange and that are fighting for our nation, I want to let those parents know that if your son and daughter is injured, to let them know that we are here for them. We'll take care of them, and we'll do our very best to get them back home to you.
Comforting words from a man who has seen it all. As for the Navy seaman you saw in surgery, 7 days later he flew back to the States for further treatment. When I checked on his condition to find out if doctors managed to save his arm, I was told that information is confidential.
Coming up next on War Stories, we return to Fallujah, the site of the biggest Marine offensive since the Vietnam War, and show you what the troops go through every day and night out on patrol. Here again are Keith Cate and Bob Height.
Now we return to Fallujah, site of one of the most gruesome images of the war in Iraq. U.S. citizens hanging and burning on a local bridge. One of the men who died was former Navy Commando Scott Helveston.
The 38-year-old Central Florida native was ambushed March 31st, 2004, near the Euphrates River. He was among 4 Americans killed that day. I spent some time embedded with Bay Area troops serving in Fallujah. The images of the mutilated bodies is on the minds of American troops every time they pass over that same bridge. Fallujah today is much calmer than it used to be. The locals now venture out on the streets, but the American troops on the ground know the enemy can be anywhere.
When we got here in February, the Marines still had an iron grip on the city.
Troops like Major Howard Hall, while not on deployment in Fallujah, he calls Pinellas County home. This Bay Area Marine, who's on his second tour of duty in Iraq, says insurgents have made some inroads in Fallujah recently.
There is some activity downtown, but overall, the civilians have done a great job of starting to clean up.
I am embedded with Hall and his men in Fallujah. Out on patrol, the men and women serving here may carry over 100 pounds of equipment, including their armored vests and helmets.
When I go outside the wire with the troops, I don't carry anywhere near as much gear as they do. But I do subscribe to part of the dress code. Long sleeve, fireproof gloves, fire protection, ballistic glasses, eye protection, and at night, clear glasses.
3 Alpha, this is 5.
For nighttime convoys, visibility is key.
Why do we run at night versus the daytime?
Why do we run at night versus the daytime?
Yeah.
It's a little bit safer. Usually we see there's a few less IEDs at night.
IEDs, or improvised explosive devices, are the most likely threat to our troops. On this night, Hall and his men and the Iraqi troops they are training try to avoid IEDs at all cost as they escort a convoy through Fallujah. We head out at 10 p.m. and start the journey that soon comes to a halt at an unexpected roadblock.
Yeah, that's where we need to go. 200 meters, we get on that overpass and go north.
Soon the convoy is on the move again. Major Hall is using a special global positioning system he first used in combat in 2003.
As we were moving around the battlefield, I could easily see who else was around me.
The equipment allows Hall to tap messages to other troops in the area, and it helps the Americans and the Iraqis to avoid friendly fire incidents.
It's the military version of what's been in a Lincoln Navigator for a while.
But no amount of equipment can guarantee the troops' safety, be it night or day. Besides bombs and booby traps, the enemy employs outrageous tactics, like giving children toy guns.
It's pretty cowardly that they're going to try and fight through kids. I mean, I understand they can't do the same soldier on soldier or tank on tank, but at least be a warrior and stand up and fight if that's what they truly believe in.
But there are positive moments as well.
We get a lot of kids like that. Usually on Thursdays we go out and try to give kids shoes, clothes, small toys, take stuff to their parents for the kids. Thursdays are a great day to go helping kids. That makes a big difference for us.
Then there's the rebuilding, like a local slaughterhouse in Fallujah. Not having one has been a big health threat for the community. And in Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit, Americans are building a cold storage unit and more.
Once it's complete, the farmers will be able to bring their produce here, and they will be able to store it for, depending upon the kind of produce, weeks or months, and then they can control when they bring it to market.
There seems to be a lot of goodwill among the locals. At this store, the owner wouldn't accept our money.
Thank you, sir.
Hello. We're not going to win this war with bullets. We're going to win this war economics, governments, infrastructure. That's the way, we will win any war we go to because we're the U.S. military. It's the next phase of the operation where we need to turn it over to the Iraqis and let them take their country back.
Back on the night patrol, safeguarding the convoy through Fallujah, Tampa Marine Howard Hall and his men reach their destination safely. Another long and dangerous day comes to an end and moves the American troops a little closer to coming home. When will our forces be withdrawn from Iraq and Afghanistan? Right now, nobody can answer that question. But the troops I met both in Afghanistan and Iraq told me that while they're looking forward to the end of their tours, they're ready to stay till the job is done.
Up next on War Stories, shrapnel sliced up this soldier's body. Coming up, you'll see how he's recovering and meet the local doctors and nurses who put him back together. You can send us your feedback about this broadcast and see additional material including Tampa Tribune articles and video postcards from local troops serving overseas. Just log on to tbo.com and type in keyword War Stories.
As you've seen during this broadcast, our wounded troops who make it to Germany are treated at a trauma center that is second to none.
In fact, one of the key reasons why 90% of the service members wounded in Iraq survive is because doctors, nurses, and support teams at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center are so good at what they do. But during my time at the hospital, I noticed something else about the people who work there. They have a sincere, heartfelt compassion for the injured they serve.
Kevin, chaplain, praying for you.
Every wounded service member who arrives in Germany,
Willie, the chaplain.
hears the voice of Captain Billy Steen.
Patrick, chaplain, we're praying for you. We take good care of you, okay?
The hospital chaplain calls them by name and tells them he's praying for them.
Take good care of you.
Over the past 12 months, Captain Steen has whispered in the ears of over 4,500 men and women injured in Iraq and Afghanistan.
That's a privileged job to get to do. To be able to look them in the face, and I've heard from numbers of them afterwards what a assuring thing that is, to hear the voice of the chaplain saying, hey, we're praying for you and we're going to take good care of you. So that's a privilege.
Compassion courses through Landstuhl Regional Medical Center.
Big deep breath.
Captain Kara Elliott is one of the first faces injured troops see when they arrive at Landstuhl. The Air Force nurse, who lives in Plant City during peacetime, takes vital signs, redresses wounds, and comforts the wounded with reassuring words.
Every single day, every single patient has a story.
And those patients are eager to tell their stories to the tender-hearted Captain Elliott.
I've heard so many stories of guys getting their buddies out of burning Humvees and just not even caring about the risk to their own body.
Staff Sergeant Willie Hall felt that obligation. He delayed treating his injuries after a suicide bomber blew up a white car 10 feet away from the Humvee the Army assigned his men to protect in Baghdad.
Do you remember the actual blast itself?
Yes, sir, I remember.
What was that like?
I just felt like my body was on fire for a second. It blew me back. I fell down, I got back up, and then I didn't know if I was on fire in the back or what, but then when I looked down, I was like, I just had a lot of blood coming out of my hand at the time and my leg. Didn't really know what was wrong with my neck until I went to treat some other guys, and then I was told that I was bleeding out the neck.
Shrapnel sliced Sergeant Hall's neck, punctured his arm, and cut his right leg. He'll undergo surgery before day's end. When he's patched up, he'll return to his squad in Baghdad, something he's anxious to do.
Are you wanting to go back with your guys?
Yes. I felt kind of bad when they left, and I was coming here.
It is a recurring theme I've heard time and time again from the injured service members I've spoken with in Germany.
it's really quite amazing. It's heartbreaking sometimes as well because the injuries can be really severe.
Captain Elliott says life on the medical surgical floor can be emotionally overwhelming, one injury after another. The pain, the faces, the heroic stories. She started this assignment just 1 month ago. She's not sure how long she'll be asked to stay. Kara tells me she thinks a lot about home, family and friends, and the upcoming Strawberry Festival in Plant City. But as long as the wounded keep coming, she...
William, Chaplain, praying for you. We take good care of you, okay?
And Chaplain Steen and all the other dedicated workers at this hospital will stand ready to provide a healing touch with some much-needed solace.
Is this where you want to be?
Right now?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Why?
These guys are doing the hard part. It's an honor to be able to take care of them when they get here. It's an honor to be able to provide just that gentle touch that their family wishes they could provide. It's a blessing just to be able to say thank you for what you're doing.
Captain Elliott, Chaplain Steen, and the others at Landstuhl have to guard against something called compassion fatigue. That's just another term for the burnout experienced by people who care for others under extreme circumstances. Some of them say they have a hard time going home even after working a 12 to 14-hour shift because the need to help is so great. But what a comfort for the folks back home and in the battlefield, knowing there are people like that serving in Landstuhl.
Coming up next, you'll meet the highest-ranking enlisted man at Central Command. We spent almost 3 weeks on the road with him, traveling through the war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. Plus, we'll take you inside Saddam's palaces and his prisons.
Curtis Brownhill is the highest-ranking enlisted man at U.S. Central Command, based at Tampa's MacDill Air Force Base. I joined him for almost 3 weeks as his job took him to all the hot spots in the war zones where our U.S. military men and women are serving. This is what we are accustomed to seeing in war coverage, but combat is but a fraction of the reality of war. There's an old soldier's saying that war is hours of boredom punctuated by seconds of sheer terror. In reality, our troops are usually way too busy to be bored. A lot of work goes into winning a war, but perhaps even more goes into winning the peace. It's work that doesn't make for exciting footage like a firefight, but wherever it's being done, it's dangerous.
There's not anywhere in Iraq right now that there isn't a threat.
Command Chief Master Sergeant Kurt Brownhill may well log more miles to more dangerous places than any other member of the United States military. What he doesn't do is spend much time at his home in Tampa. He's the highest-ranking enlisted man at Central Command, that unit based at MacDill that is responsible for our military operations throughout the Mideast and down through the Horn of Africa. His job is that of General John Abizade's liaison to all the enlisted personnel within the command. His meetings with the troops aren't formal. They may be in a mess hall while tossing down a meal, or under a hangar tossing around a football. But once with them, he is their mentor, their sounding board, a human conduit in combat boots, through which the command constantly reinforces the mission, but also gains from the ground-gathered information that successful generals have always counted on from their NCOs and enlisted ranks.
Things tended to come down from the top, but now we seek inputs from the middle, from the ground, from the youngest troop, and they can handle that, and they can handle with ease the discussions that we have about why this effort is so important.
By the time they have served their tours, most of our troops have seen firsthand examples of why they might consider the effort important.
Shock. It's unbelievable that something like this is possible.
Floridian Ruth Levy's reaction to one of Saddam's prisons. The Lieutenant and Sergeant First Class Anthony McCloyne showed me cells designed for 2, in which 10 were kept. Cells where prisoners' wives and children were kept.
They would take the families and they would get, this is how they would get the males to do what they wanted them to do. Join the army, Saddam did what he has to do. So they would put the families in here. They would hold anywhere, what we was told, anywhere from 30 to 50 people in one of these cells.
Here, an alley with no shelter from the incessant sun and heat.
This is where they would shackle them to the ground. They would leave them out here for weeks on end.
And finally, they showed me this underground corridor.
They soldiers, they'd bring prisoners down here and torture them.
What was the rationale for taking them down here for that purpose?
Noise.
Noise. So the other prisoners couldn't hear what was being done.
Exactly.
While many suffered and died in his dungeons, Saddam, his sons, and high-ranking leadership lived like kings. The State Department estimates that since the Gulf War, he spent over $2 billion building dozens more palaces than he already had. Much, if not all of the money, coming from the kickbacks he received in the Oil for Food program. Serving in the front lines is a mission these troops are committed to, but as Command Chief Master Sergeant Kurt Brownhill says, they all do miss their loved ones.
I'd like to send a message to my wife Cheryl, the love of my life, my best friend, soulmate. Think the world of you, sweetheart, and thank you for supporting me on all this.
Tonight we've been showing you the incredible sacrifices our American forces have been making in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and how the rapid evacuation of casualties is helping to save more lives than in all previous wars.
The work being done is awe-inspiring, but here's something else to think about. When a service member is wounded downrange and then flown thousands of miles away to a hospital in Germany, they arrive with very little clothing. And that's where the chaplain's closet and your donations come in, aiding in the healing process.
Some sweats, some socks, underwear.
It is a room not much bigger than a walk-in closet filled with the basics, toiletries, donated clothes, and other personal items.
Shoes, if we can swing that. A lot of times, different sizes are hard to fit.
To wounded service members at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, this tiny chaplain's closet is a godsend.
Sometimes they're amazed when they see all this and they say, well, where did this come from? And we say, well, this is a donation from the folks back home, and they're happy that someone's thinking of them.
When troops are wounded in Iraq and Afghanistan, they are flown to Germany for treatment. There's no time to pack or change clothes, so they usually arrive in dirty uniforms, sometimes just a pair of boxer shorts.
Are you looking for anything in particular? Or?
Army Specialist Alvin Pipin is a gunner. He says while riding atop a Humvee in Iraq, his elbow gave way to the excessive jarring of continuous machine gun fire, and it popped out of socket. Doctors sent him to Landstuhl for surgery.
I thought I'd be here for about 2 days.
But Pipin's recovery time here will take much longer. Doctors sent him to the chaplain's closet to round out his wardrobe, consisting of a single camouflage uniform. And you know where all this comes from?
Roger. So I'm glad to have the support.
For a soldier far from home, knowing he is supported and not forgotten goes a long way in the healing process.
Just for morale reasons. You think like you're not alone, because it can get kind of lonely.
A tiny closet tucked in the corner of a massive medical center, meeting the physical and emotional needs of healing troops, courtesy of the folks back home. Chaplain Bowerman gave me a list of the ongoing needs. Athletic shoes, men's sizes 9 to 15, women's sizes 6 to 9, winter jackets sizes medium through extra large, boxer underwear and boxer briefs medium to large. Keep in mind the chaplain's closet can only accept new items. Phone cards are also in demand, and of course you can make a cash contribution. That gives the chaplain the flexibility to purchase the most urgent needs in a timely way. You can participate by sending your check made payable to the following address. If you didn't get all the donation details down, just log on to tbo.com, keyword War Stories.
Coming up next, a happy reunion for a little girl from Afghanistan and the Florida troops that helped her get the heart surgery she desperately needed. We'll take you along for their joint vacation, and we'll return to Germany for one last time to meet a Bay Area grandmother who's doing her part in the war effort.
In the blink of an eye, everything can change for a soldier serving in a war zone. Car bombs, sniper bullets, and booby traps are daily dangers. But when lives are torn apart by war and the wounded are rescued from the battlefield, there is a place in Germany where the healing can begin. The locals call this place K-Town, and as we soon discovered, many of the people who live and work there are your neighbors. Its historical past is beautifully preserved. But the city of Kaiserslautern, or K-Town as some call it, has grown to become the largest American community outside the United States. Kaiserslautern is a fairly large city with a population of 110,000 people, half of that American, most coming from the military community. And during our time here, we found dozens of people from the Tampa Bay area playing significant roles in the war.
There's big stuff going on here, and people are paying a price.
Captain Sean Casperson from Palma Sia is the C Company commander at Landstuhl Regional Medical Center. The Plant High School graduate and Buccaneers fan oversees all clinical aspects at the hospital.
We're at a point right now that requires sacrifice, because if we don't sacrifice now, then who knows how many others will do later.
More than 2,000 American troops have been killed since the beginning of the Iraq War. The fatality count would be higher if not for this top-line trauma center.
This is one of the busiest stations in the whole hospital, it really is.
Major Barbara McGann is from the 73rd Field Hospital out of St. Petersburg. She shuffles hundreds of patients on and off her surgical floor, getting them treated and back to the battlefield or home as soon as possible, a place she dreams about between 14-hour shifts.
Oh, sure. I have 4 little grandkids at home that I'm missing birthdays, and sure it is.
Landstuhl is the biggest U.S. military hospital overseas, so it should come as no surprise that many of the doctors who work here treat military personnel with non-combat injuries and illnesses.
We keep some patients here until they're stable.
Colonel Lynn Abrams, an endocrinologist from Wesley Chapel, cares for troops with thyroid problems, diabetes, even cancer.
Even though I want to send them home because they have medical problems that can't be taken care of here, some of them are very adamant that they want to go back to Iraq.
At nearby Ramstein Air Base, we found Airman Erica Myers. 3 years ago, she was a student at Jefferson High School. Today, she analyzes satellite signals for combat commanders.
And they depend on our data for their operations down there, so it's a very important part. Go ahead and talk to me.
Equally important is the job of taking care of all the planes that fly through Ramstein.
I'll probably stay in 20 plus years.
On a bus ride out to the tarmac, I met Senior Airman Brian Thompson from Tampa.
Making sure it's all ready to go, make sure nothing's broken or nothing like that.
He and the others at Ramstein leave nothing to chance when it comes to making sure everyone walks away from an aircraft safely.
Thank you.
Master Sergeant Ronald Norton from St. Petersburg says his men save lives.
They take care of the parachutes, the pilot's helmets, oxygen equipment, the chem gear, the night vision goggles. We maintain all that. So our saying is, your life is our business.
It is the business of everyone serving in K-Town's large military family. From those who work at the hospital in the stunning scenic hills of Landstuhl, to the airbase, nestled between historical landmarks and a bustling town center.
So what they do is really making history.
Captain Casperson says he is grateful Tampa cares about their sacrifice and commitment.
You're here, so that means a heck of a lot.
On a personal note, before leaving, I was humbled when Captain Casperson presented us with a special coin, an honor usually reserved for soldiers who go above and beyond the call of duty.
You're also a great American who's helping by not letting everyone forget.
After seeing what goes on here, how could I or anyone ever forget? The stories of struggle and sacrifice we witness in Germany are simply unforgettable. And words cannot express how humbled I was when Captain Casperson presented us with that special Charlie Company coin. All of the service members we met during our trip to Germany are doing such incredible work. We owe them a huge debt of gratitude.
Now back to 6-year-old Basira Jan, the little girl who underwent life-saving heart surgery here in the United States back in September. And thanks to the Florida Guard troops, she got something else as well. Just before she flew back home to Afghanistan, she got a vacation of a lifetime in Orlando, a small gift donated to her by the Florida Guard troops who practically adopted her.
Here, you want to hold my hand?
6-year-old Basira Jan looks like any other child enjoying a vacation at Disney World.
You want me to wear the ears? How's that?
To look at her now, you'd never know that just a few months ago, she was so sick that she couldn't walk, much less run or play.
She has a congenital heart defect.
I first met Basira and her dad at Camp Phoenix near Kabul in Afghanistan in August.
She would have died. There's no doubt that she would have died had she not had the operation.
Sitting in the cool Florida winter breeze under the stars and stripes at Disney World, Florida Guard Major Courtney Callis told me how Bashira flew to America for heart surgery, and then an all-expense-paid vacation, both compliments of the Florida Guard.
Remember me in Afghanistan?
I was reunited with Major Callis, Bashira, and her father, Ghulam Ghaus, in Orlando.
She's very good now. She's great. I'm 100% sure that she's very well now, and God willing, she'll be continue her life, the rest of her life back in Afghanistan.
For Callis and the Florida Guard troops serving with him in Afghanistan, Bashira has become like their own child and an important victory in the campaign to win the hearts and minds of the Afghan people.
Just knowing that I helped her is it's actually, I can't put it in words, because it really means a lot to me that I had the opportunity to give her life, because that's really what happened.
For some time now, much of the coverage we've seen from Afghanistan and Iraq is focused on terrorist attacks and the setbacks the U.S. has encountered. Had I been a witness to such things, I would have included them in my reports. If any of the scores of troops I spent time with have a morale problem, well, they're not only great soldiers, but great actors. And the appreciation I saw shown to them by the Afghan and Iraqi people seemed completely sincere, especially the camaraderie between the Iraqi troops and their American Marine Corps trainers. It was a privilege for me to be among our forces, and to a man and a woman, each is doing us all proud.
You know, when you look into the eyes of those serving our country, you see a determination to complete the mission. They don't know how long it will take or how many lives will be lost, neither do we or anyone else for that matter, but we all know the price for freedom is high. How can we not be grateful to those willing to pay the price on behalf of everyone else?
Thanks for watching this program, and good night.
For more on this News Channel 8 special series and tonight's broadcast, log on to TDO.com. Keyword War Stories.